Whoa! Hey everybody, Fatman here, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most well-rounded, character-driven, and inventive cartoons I have ever seen in my entire life. Bet you can't guess from the intro. This show, no joke, made its way right up there amongst some of my favorite animated cartoons of all time, including Ed, Edd n Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and Ruby Gloom. It's a series I cannot recommend enough if you're a fan of clever stories, amazing characters, and engaging and witty writing. I'll go as far as to say that watching this show isn't just a recommendation, it's an absolute necessity if you enjoy animation. Since I clearly buried the lead here, and if the title doesn't make it obvious enough with all the other references that have happened up to this point, I'm of course talking about the stunning masterclass that is Regular Show. Regular Show debuted in September 2010 and wrapped its impressive run in January of 2017 after 8 seasons of television and a film. For a little background information, Regular Show debuted in an era where I was too cool for cartoons and I was done watching any of this new age modern garbage. That wasn't for me anymore. I was trying to be a big boy and watch real serious TV, like The King of Queens.
Are you joking?
No. Yeah, I'd stopped, I was like, no, cartoons are dumb. Ugh, fuck cartoons. They don't want to watch this new. It's not my classic Ed, Edd n Eddy, Courage, blah, blah, blah. And I literally watched, the entire, I just jumped to, stupid sitcoms. I watched The King of Queens and, Yes Dear and shit like that. I'm like, they're good shows. I just find it funny that I was like, I'm too mature for Regular Show and then King of Queens.
Yeah.
Basically, I was being a prick about anything new and lauding it as inferior to those classics that I grew up with. How pretentious is that? No, obviously that all changed, and I would return to a lot of what I missed from that era and found, honestly, a bunch of great shows, including Gravity Falls, Chowder, The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, and Phineas and Ferb. All wonderful shows in their own right. None of these, however, stood out more to me than Regular Show. Originally, all I knew of the show was the little bits and pieces I'd hear or see in the background while my little brother was watching the show, as he was a big fan. As I would find myself laughing or being absolutely confused by the absurdity of things, I began to get over my previous bitch fit about new cartoons and would sit down and enjoy it from time to time with my brothers, watching about 45% of the show with them. So recently I sat down and I watched the entire show from top to bottom, and I can honestly say I have never loved this show more than I do right now. Fatman in 2023, Regular Show approved, baby. So grab your popcorn and have a piss, because I'm going to take you back on the entire run of one of the best damn shows I have ever seen. Season 1 most definitely hits the ground running, debuting with the classic episode, The Power, and finishing with the absolutely perfect Mordecai and the Rigby's. Created by J.G. Quintel, who also voices Mordecai in High Five Ghost, the strength of these characters is immediately recognized. They're all distinct and fleshed out, and each one has a unique personality that never wavers as the show goes on, only strengthened with character growth as they adapt throughout the series. Whether you stan Muscle Man or you're more of a Pops kind of guy, every single character in the show is so likable. Even High Five Ghost, who admittedly early on in the series' run isn't given much to do, often being relegated to Muscle Man's sidekick. Because I enjoy all these characters so much, I'm going to do something I generally don't do in these reviews, which I definitely plan to start doing because voice actors more than deserve this amount of respect. So I'm going to take this moment to pay credit to the entire voice cast here. J.G. Quintel, the creator and writer of the series, voices Mordecai and High Five Ghost. Five starting in Season 2, as he was voiced by Jeff Bennett solely for this season. The lovable William Saliers gives life to Rigby, while the absolute powerhouse of a talent known as Sam Marin pulls the hat trick, speaking on behalf of Pops, Muscle Man, and Benson. And none other than Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, voices Skips. The setup for most of the episodes is pretty straightforward. Generally, a mundane situation sees Mordecai and Rigby trying to get out of work when some insane supernatural or science fiction-y element takes over and veers the entire situation out of control. Time travel, aliens, weird monsters, world-ending events, deadly kung fu moves, a sandwich that kills you if you eat it without wearing jorts and a mullet, a killer British taxi, giant eternal beings that all resemble giant babies, and arm wrestling with Death himself are all situations that, ironically, are not out of the ordinary and fits contextually with the rules that the show has set up for this universe. Funnily enough, I was talking about Regular Show with a coworker of mine recently, and when I told him the name of the show, he rolled his eyes and went, "Wow, they really tried hard with that one. If you only knew, Jeff. If you only knew." Well, obviously the show is very nonsensical, but it never suffers from debut seasonitis, where everything kind of just feels unpolished and lacks finish. It's not jarring to return to season 1 of Regular Show like it is with, say, something like the first season of The Simpsons.
Oh.
You could keep that into it. Just, oh.
Drinks all around.
What's with the crazy get-up, Barn?
I got me a part-time job working as a Santa down at the mall.
Wow, can I do that?
Well, I don't know. They're pretty selective.
In my opinion, the strength of the writing and the characters helps the show find its footing immediately, and that can definitely be attributed to Quintel's time spent at the California Institute of the Arts, and his time spent working as a storyboard artist on Camp Laszlo, as well as his time spent working as a creative director of The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. I highly recommend checking out 2 of the shorts Quintel worked on prior to Regular Show, as they both became the basis for the entire series. You have The Naive Man from Lollyland, starring Pops.
Remember when Pops f***ing almost beat a man like f***ing Cher?
Yeah.
Pops was bloodthirsty.
And 2 in the AM/PM, both of which could be found here on YouTube. But be forewarned that the latter isn't appropriate for younger viewers, as it pretty much features a primitive version of Mordecai and Benson tripping on acid. After a short but excellent first season, we jump into season 2, which dives more into Mordecai's feelings towards Margaret, a girl who works at a coffee shop that he has a crush on, and mega babe Eileen, who has an unrequited crush on Rigby.
I just want to throw this out there. I'm pretty sure Margaret has male plumage for birds, so yeah.
She's a girl, damn it, she has tits. Let me formally say that for the entire run of the show, I was a huge, literally, fan of Eileen. She is, in essence, a perfect character. The way she bounces off Rigby, how she's initially presented as perfect before we find out that she has fears and anxieties and other things that make her a relatable character. Her monotone delivery, which works so perfectly with the jokes that they write for her. Very rarely does a show introduce a character that I fall this in love with that sits outside of the main group of characters we already know. But storyboard artist Minty Lewis plays this part to absolute perfection. In fact, season 2 does a whole hell of a lot that I'm a fan of. We start to see elements and characters that are called back to throughout the entire series, and I absolutely love Regular Show's attention to detail in this aspect. At the end of the day, it's an animated show aimed at a younger demographic, and I'm not saying that something like this needs to have an overarching story or callbacks, or really, it doesn't even need to bother with having that much consistency. But any show that does take the time to do this will always earn bonus points in my book. Not only is it really fun and engaging for the viewer, but it serves to show you that these talented writers are paying a lot of attention to the work and lovingly succeeding in delivering an experience, not just a TV show. Father Time in It's Time, Garrett Bobby Ferguson in High Score, Party Pete, the bunch of baby ducks. I could go on for literal hours. This aids in setting up the staging of this universe so enticingly, so that when these characters are called back upon, it never feels like obligatory or like a random cameo. As well as Eileen, this season also introduces us to Mr. Maylard, the park owner and Pops' father, Muscle Man's girlfriend / future wife Starla, spoilers, duh, and Fives' brother Low Five Ghost. Season 2 also toys with a lot of changes that weave themselves into the framework that this series is set up so well. We start getting episodes focused on other characters, not just Mordecai and Rigby. And it's here where we start to see the potential for every side character to eventually set up and become a major player, being more than capable of holding their own. We get teases about Mona from Skip's literal seasons before we actually find out the backstory behind her. We get a look into the relationship between Mr. Maillard and Benson, aiding in humanizing Benson and taking him to more than just the yelly boss. We receive more insight into Mordecai's crush on Margaret and his feelings for her. It's little seeds like this that regular shows succeed so well in planting because they never give you too much of something. So when we do start getting episodes devoted to Mordecai and Margaret's relationship, or episodes deep diving into something that was previously hinted at, it feels warranted as well as wanted. And that's really, really important. Regular show does the slice of life stuff just as well as it does the supernatural stuff. Even better in my opinion. Moving into season 3, the writing and character growth somehow triples over time. Not to say that the first couple of seasons are sloppy, but everything just feels tighter here. The delivery, the story, the characters. Sorry, I don't know what the fuck it is I'm doing with my hand right now like that. The delivery, the story, the characters. Nothing is forgotten about, only added upon. And the series starts to really hit its stride here. The Terror Tales of the Park are introduced in this season, a Treehouse of Horror-esque type episode that went on to become a staple of every season going forward. We see Muscle Man and High Five Ghost becoming less antagonistic to Mordecai and Rigby, becoming allies and eventually joining the two on nearly all their adventures.
Kind of like Muscle Man when he's just like an asshole.
Well, he's still an asshole. He's like slightly, like the dial's turned down just a hair, but he's still, like, you'll see it consistently throughout the whole thing. He's still a dick. But, like, as opposed to, like, if someone starts bullying Mordecai and Rigby, he hops on the bandwagon, and will be like, no way, bros. More lore is discovered about Skips' personality, as well as the Council of Elders, Gary, Tecmo, and Death. And we get introduced to Gene, voiced by Red Foreman himself, a rival park manager who was just another delightful addition to this cast. Season 3 also does a stellar job of balancing the crazy antics with the slice of life material. We get further insight into Muscle Man's relationship with Starla, as well as the tug of war, will they, won't they, between Mordecai and Margaret. Which, shockingly, at least for me, never got old. I originally feared it would be more of a Ross and Rachel type situation where everybody just stopped caring because the writers fumbled it so hard. But the writing keeps these relationship episodes grounded and relatable. Something that's extremely difficult to do, but it keeps things relevant. We want to see Mordecai succeed despite his simping. We want to see Muscle Man impress Starla's parents. I never found myself wanting to skip these episodes or just get back to the original madness of things. Something I honestly can't say for most portrayals of relationships on television. Margaret and Mordecai even share their first kiss in the finale. Sure, Mordecai botches it, but you'll just learn that's kind of what he does. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll realize that I've glossed over a really, really important character that gets her introduction in the Yes Dude, Yes episode. None other than CJ shows up here, and do you remember all the stuff I said about Eileen back when I was talking about Season 2? You can go ahead and apply all of that times 2 to CJ. After misinterpreting a gesture he sees from the coffee shop window, Mordecai believes that Margaret has become engaged and soon finds himself hanging out with and enjoying the company of CJ, who is heavily implied to have feelings for Mordecai. After Margaret clears up the confusion, Mordecai returns to simp for her and mucks things up with CJ, who was led to believe that she and Mordecai were going on her first date. Again, this is kind of what Mordecai does. I'll talk more about CJ a little later on, but she's literally everything you would want in an interesting female character. Especially if you are going to make her a love interest. She is infinitely more interesting than Margaret. Yeah, you heard me. This fat internet dork was Team CJ all the way. Hashtag it. A quick dap to the episode's fortune cookie and excellent. Some of my favorites of the series. And to the episodes Prankless and Fuzzy Dice, which, continuing the trend from Season 2's Grave Sites, present some of my favorite story setups in the series. That being when the entire cast teams up to solve a problem or fight together. Those are, 9 times out of 10, my favorite episodes, as the entire cast is so likable and bounce off each other super well. Season 4 opens with my hands-down favorite season premiere of the entire series, Exit 9B. 2 months after the hiring of new park intern Thomas, the park is destroyed by a mysterious businessman later revealed to be the son of Garrett Bobby Ferguson, and damn it, this is why I love this show so much. This wouldn't have worked anywhere else. Giving a one-time character a son that would be the destruction of the entire cast. But the premise is so ludicrous and the payoff is so satisfying. They really hit the nail on the head. Include callbacks to literally almost everything we've seen in this entire series up to this point. And you have perfection. I'm just gonna say it. The pacing, the animation, the character interactions, the action sequences, the Easter eggs rewarding all the viewers who've come along for the ride so far. It is masterful. This season is an easy contention for the best season of the show as well. The ante is upped for most of what's been established so far, and Exit 9B isn't the only compelling, suspenseful work to be found here. The Christmas special, Sandwich of Death, A Bunch of Full-Grown Geese, Guys Night, Skips His Stress, That's My Television, The Last Laserdisc Player, Last Meal. This season is stacked to the brim with banger after banger, most of which can be considered the series' best episode in its own right. In Meteor Moves, we even see the fruits of Mordecai's labor finally pay off as he kisses Margaret without messing it up this time, and the two of them finally begin dating. Unfortunately, in the season finale Stake Me Amadeus, Mordecai sets out to make the relationship official. And Margaret reveals that she can't because she's been accepted to an out-of-state college and will be departing soon. Ending things with Mordecai. For now.
What is this, a 90s sitcom?
Look, I don't know what else to say. I could literally sing the praises of Season 4 all day. The character interactions are better, the writing is tighter and more cohesive. The character relationships take center stage to massive avail. It's wittier, it's more charming. Quintel and his team did absolutely nothing but deliver the goods here. And I would not and could not fault anyone for claiming this as the best season of the show. I hate to do this after singing the praises of the previous season, but Season 5 has a few issues for me. And it's the first time in the series' run, in my personal opinion, where I feel like the cracks begin to show. Not that this is a bad season or anything, far from it, but here's my issue. As I mentioned before, the show handles relatable slice-of-life stuff well. Too well. Some of the crazy supernatural elements start to feel misplaced and unnecessary at points, being shoehorned into the closing minutes of an episode just for consistency's sake. But in fairness, that's what Regular Show has done from the beginning. They become so intrusive though, and I find myself wanting to get through them as quickly as possible, just to get back to the real story being told. Nothing exemplifies this better than the season premiere, Laundry Woes. After a heartbroken Mordecai finally begins to heal after the Margaret fiasco, he finds one of her old sweaters and it kinda re-breaks him. Okay, that's relatable. I feel like most of us have had at least one breakup that was like that. He dedicates himself to a 10-hour drive to return the sweater to her, ignoring Rigby's objections, who tells him that it'll only make things worse and that he needs to let it go. This does an excellent job of showing how and why the writing in the show works so well. Everything presented here is so relatable, and it resonates with the millions of people who've had an experience like this. It's normal to struggle getting over somebody you had really strong feelings for. It's normal to go backwards every once in a while when you're still trying to get over that person. Rigby does an immaculate job of playing the standoffish, stern best friend, who's only being that way because he truly cares about his bro and he wants him to really heal. In short, the setup is perfect. And this specific story being told is more than enough. Then it all gets derailed when Mordecai kicks Rigby out of the car, and the sweater turns into an evil, sentient Margaret hologram and tries to strangle Mordecai. This was completely unnecessary, and while it doesn't tank the episode, it did leave me scratching my head and wondering why these more than capable writers were reverting to this. When you already have the groundwork laid for a relatable and meaningful story, inserting supernatural elements like this not only becomes an intrusion, but a distraction as well. At the end of the day, Mordecai decides not to return the sweater, and the episode is capped off properly with a smartly written lesson. you can remove the sweater demon thing and lose absolutely none of this. On some more positive notes, everything the series previously nailed, it continues to do so here, delivering another excellent crop of episodes, including the damn near perfection of the Thanksgiving special, Skips' story, return of Mordecai and the Rigbys, and I Like You High. A little before the midway point of the season, we even get the return of CJ in New Year's Kiss. And we actually get to see Mordecai competently, finally, start a relationship with her. I was a huge fan of this move. Huge. Not only does it fit narratively well, but they expertly built the chain of events leading up to this point. And they do so expertly that it feels almost inevitable. Like it's a certainty that these two would wind up together, and it works extraordinarily well. CJ, again, is such a great character. The signs that a character is extremely well written is when they could take already amazing characters around them and elevate them by bringing to the forefront more of what works about those characters. And this is what CJ is able to do with Mordecai and Rigby, Eileen, and even Starla to a degree. Again, y'all, I don't know how any of you can stand Margaret. Cloudy J all the way, yo. Season 5 is also the point where I found myself liking Rigby way more than I like Mordecai. In the first half of the series, I found Rigby slightly annoying. Still a great character, by all means, but slightly annoying. And I related with and enjoyed Mordecai's character more than I did Rigby. At this point of the series, though, that completely flip-flops. And I found myself enjoying Rigby a lot more as the writers somehow keep finding ways to build him up and flesh him out more as a character. He definitely becomes more nuanced. But it's not just Rigby. Pops, Benson, Muscleman, Eileen, Skips. The talent behind this team of writers to just keep finding ways to make these characters better and more relatable. Something almost impossible this far into a show's run, yet they keep finding ways to do it. Even High Five Ghost finally gets his time to shine in the postcard episode. An episode I adored, and it finally feels like they found out what to do with Fives as a character here.
It kind of sounds like King of the Hill, where like as the show went on later, it's less about Hank and his family, it's more about like this ensemble of characters they've made.
Absolutely, 100%. Maybe that's why I like these two shows so much, and why like I found that appreciation, because I watched King of the Hill and then I jumped to regular show. Like I didn't watch anything else in between.
Honestly, when I think about it, they are kind of similar in that regard of like the way they just it starts out with something. And
yeah, with just Mordecai and Rigby, and then like just Hank, and then it really like. I don't know, as the audience picks more on those characters, and they do a great job in both shows too. Like I was the only time I ever groaned during King of the Hill, Peggy episode. Other than that,
yeah, honestly,
but juxtaposed with like all the other stuff, you did need the Peggy episodes.
Yeah, the funny thing about Peggy is she's the best character ever because you're supposed to hate her. She's supposed to be a pseudo-intellectual stupid,
and it worked. Almost there, folks. I promise. Season 6 is a shorter season, but in my opinion, probably does the best job of interweaving all the story elements together, as well as rectifying past complaints or issues that I've had thus far into the series run. Thomas's introduction in Season 4 felt really random to me, and his character felt pointless most of the time he was on screen. Regular show promptly says, "Shut your fat ass up and hold my beer," and then drops the real Thomas on me this season. A fantastic episode that succeeds on every single front. The wacky antics are back and written so especially well for this episode that it reminds me of why they were such a big part of the series to begin with. The plot twist is admittedly a little out of left field, but it had me going back and checking older episodes that Thomas was in, just to see if these pieces were always there, and lo and behold, they were. It was all lined up and planned from the beginning, and the execution is flawless, regardless of how you feel about the twist specifically. The relationships are still being written exceptionally well. Rigby and Eileen's friendship is written so wholesomely, and CJ and Mordecai are written very, very relatably. So much so that when Margaret returns to town and moves in with Eileen, it actually really sucks to see Mordecai and CJ struggle to stay together as a result of Mordecai messing everything up. Again, and Margaret still having feelings for him. Muscleman and Starla get hitched, and God, I've said it close to maybe 24 times in this review already, but these writers just get how to write a compelling, nuanced, and interesting relationship, romantic or otherwise. The season finale, Dumped at the Altar, sees Muscleman and Starla getting married and Mordecai officially dumping CJ, but deciding not to date Margaret either, opting to be alone. We also get the revelation that Eileen and Rigby have been dating for several months, but opting to keep it more low-key. And I'm not even gonna lie to you, I don't care how lame this sounds, I fist pumped when they said so. I literally went, yes. I think I cared more about Rigby and Eileen's relationship than any relationship I've ever actually been in. And that probably explains why I'm single. But Rigby and Eileen are adorable, fight me. Season 7 presents a little bit of a predicament. This is where the show begins to set up for the final season and something I refer to as the big change happen. Before I do get to that, I would like to point out that this is far and away Rigby's best season, as he decides he wants to be smarter for Eileen and as a result, commits to going back to high school and getting his diploma. A neat and well-written arc that is a slam dunk every time they decide to focus on it for this season. Rigby's story and character growth is charming and consistent this entire season, and it never overstays its welcome. We even get to see Thomas returning for one more guys' night before we bid him adieu, and we get to see Benson spending some time trying to start a relationship with Pam, a scientist who works in the Dome, which is surprisingly wholesome. I like Benson. I root for him. I want to preface the incoming rant by saying that I really do believe Season 7 is as well written as any of the series' standout seasons. It's equally as consistent with its character development and storytelling, and it hits a home run with the finale. That being said, let's talk about the Dome. Episodes 5 and 6 of the season present to us the Dome Experiment, an episode revealing Mr. Maillard having instructed a team of scientists to put a dome around the park, leaving all of the park workers trapped inside. The crew learns to adapt, with the exception of Benson, who becomes distrustful of all of the scientists, albeit for a petty but hilarious reason. The dome is lifted at the episode's end, and Mr. Maillard reveals that, hey, he's rich. He just wanted to see what would happen and how the park workers would adapt if he placed a dome over the place for 30 days. Fast forward to episode 30 of this season, The Button. We see that the Dome Experiment is back on, only this time the park workers are allowed to freely enter and exit the dome at will. And the lead scientist, Dr. Langer, places a large red button in the center of the park, instructing the park crew to protect the button at all costs. The dome pretty much becomes a staple for the rest of the season, and we're reminded of its existence constantly, and teased with the knowledge that something more sinister might be going on with the scientist and the dome itself. Pops' favorite planet is another important stable episode leading up to the series' endgame, which sees Pops harness some kind of mystical psychic energy, much to everyone's confusion. It's seemingly random, but it comes into play in a huge way later on. We enter the season finale, Rigby's graduation day special, as Rigby finally receives his diploma, and Mordecai kinda laments the fact that Rigby has had so much character development this season. Like, no joke. The guys eventually reconcile, and Eileen, who's watching Rigby's graduation speech via live stream from her college graduation, sneaks off to the park to bake Rigby his favorite dessert in preparation for his party later. The scientists also pack up and decide to leave, leaving the red button behind. As the crew readies to throw Rigby a party after a successful graduation speech, pagers start going off that were given to each park worker during the Button episode, requesting that they all return to the park immediately. Mordecai, Rigby, Fives, Muscleman, Benson, and Skips, and Pops race back to the park, deciding that it's time to push the button. Now at this point, our park workers are leading the pack, and they're being followed by a huge crowd of reoccurring characters, including Margaret, Starla, and pretty much anybody else who cares about them. They all unanimously join hands and push the button, which sends the dome blasting off into outer space, leaving a crater where the park once stood, as well as our gaggle of onlookers, none of whom have made it onto the dome. Among those onlookers is Mr. Maillard and lead scientist Dr. Langer. As a tear slides down Mr. Maillard's face as he watches the dome barreling off into space, we hear Langer utter the phrase, "Don't worry, he'll be alright." teasing something far more sinister is in the works here. We pan back up to the dome as a confused Eileen is seen coming out of the house holding Rigby's favorite dessert. When she realizes that she's suddenly been barreled off into outer space, and we cut to credits. Holy crap. When I first saw this, my jaw hit the floor. The tension, the stakes, the twist of this dome being set up for this entire season as a vessel to bring the park workers into space intentionally. Regardless of how you personally feel about Season 8, the setup and payoff to all of the dome stuff, in my opinion, was done masterfully. No flaws, no exceptions. It was done to perfection. This, however, leads me to a huge complaint that does affect Season 7 in a negative way. Spoiler alert, the entirety of Season 8 is set in space. Closing minutes of the finale aside, the park crew never comes back down. My complaint and my wish here is that they would have wrapped up all the storylines before they got rocketed off into space. No pun intended. Mordecai and CJ, while broken up, were technically on a break.
We were on a break!
It was left open-ended and never resolved. CJ was such a great character. She deserved more than that, and I wish she was shown a little more respect in the endgame. Pops and Mr. Maylard had zero one-on-one interactions. And when you look at the horizon of what's on deck for Pops as a character, I feel like that would have benefited the final resolution immensely. Benson had just started developing his relationship with Pam. Considering how well this show does relationships, I really wanted to see where that went, and it feels cruel to rip that away from Benson. All that being said, the final shot of the dome blasting off into space, with all those characters on it, as all the other reoccurring characters look up at them, is one of the most memorable and well choreographed shots of this entire show. Alright, here we go, boys and girls. The final season that truly did change everything. I don't know how much of a hot take this is going to be, but Season 8 is really the weakest season of the series. I dig the idea, okay? For the most part, I even dig the execution. But there are some glaring flaws holding this season back. Leftover storylines that didn't and never will get resolved aside, putting such amazing and well-written characters in space just limits what they can do. By Season 4, the show was so confident in its well-built and well-written characters that we were able to split off from Mordecai and Rigby. We were able to have a Muscle Man episode, or a Skips episode, or a Benson episode. The list goes on. It was still assured that you were going to get a great episode due to the strength of the writing. It was no longer a requirement to have the sole focus be on Mordecai and Rigby. Everyone else was just as well-rounded and just as likable. Grouping all of these characters together like this costs something. You lose that freedom and mobility, and you lose an important element of storytelling. You lose the freedom of interaction. What I mean by that is the characters chose who they were going to interact with. And while that may not sound like a big deal, it affects Season 8 in a huge way. They all bounce off each other so well that you could place any two characters into a conversation, and it's going to be fun. You didn't necessarily need Mordecai and Rigby to flesh out a conversation, or interject with their opinions if the episode chose to focus on, say, Muscle Man and Starla's relationship, or Skips and the Immortals. Here, by forcing everyone to constantly remain side by side, they have to bounce off each other. Even if it's retroactive, and if you choose this format, many characters wind up being relegated to the background or having nothing to say, really. Especially with the number of new characters we get introduced to going forward. Honestly, think about how many worthwhile things Skips got to say in this final season. Or Eileen, or Fives. It's not much, and I understand that the focus of the season is supposed to be Pops, but that's kind of another thing I have an issue with. Even when the show does try to have isolated stories, like in Space Creds or Lost and Found, these stories are never as interesting as the ones found in previous seasons for one distinct reason. Regular Show was already notorious for having zany, out-of-left-field science fiction-y supernatural stuff going on. We've seen a lot of these subplots already, and we've seen so much entities and creatures and insane X gone wrong stories across these last 7 seasons that nothing found here is really new, or honestly, it's not even that interesting. We've seen Mordecai and Rigby deal with different monsters or different species of being. Hell, this isn't even the first time we've seen these characters go to space, albeit this is their longest stay. Really think about it. I want you to sit there and just really separate the two things for just 1 second. Is a giant man-eating planet of killer praying mantises really any more shocking or creative than a mechanized anime megazord fighting a flock of baby ducks, or an underworld playground located in hell, or an immortal baby god needing to be fought in space with skips using the fists of justice? We've seen the wild, we've seen the crazy, we've seen the weird, and space just doesn't add anything to that. Finally, we get to the meat and potatoes of the final season, Pops. I want to make it perfectly clear that I love Pops as a character. In fact, Pops is my favorite character. In the first few episodes of the season, the crew lands at the Space Tree, a giant hub world of other domes led by Colonel Rawls, who informs them about some BS project to terraform the galaxy with other parks. We later learn that all of this is a cover story concocted by the Colonel and Mr. Maylard, as Pops is revealed to be a chosen one through an ancient prophecy, making him the embodiment of pure good, who is destined to do battle against his evil twin brother Anti-Pops, the embodiment of pure evil, every 14 billion years. Yeah, I have already typed this script, and reading that bit out to myself still sounds like a jarring tone shift. The back half of this season sees Pops taking on way more of a lead role, as the crew hops from planet to planet trying to protect Pops and uncover his origins. We learn that the battle between Pops and Anti-Pops has always ended in a draw, and when it does so, the universe is erased and completely reset. Pops, at first, is opposed to the idea of fighting Anti-Pops, opting to try to resolve things peacefully. But when he falls into a trap set by him by Anti-Pops and almost gets himself and all of his friends killed, Pops begins to understand the severity of the situation, and takes on trading from an ancient sensei named Earl. And I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it is. To its credit, when all the Pop stuff starts really rolling out and getting going, the storytelling does get a lot better and more consistent. It's a lot less fragmented, and we start edging out those filler episodes that have been sprinkled throughout this season. While I'm not the biggest fan of the Pops twist, these writers are still able to showcase just why they were so damn smart and creative to begin with. Because when the story starts to really roll out, they do a fantastic job balancing the severity of the story with the humor and the nonsensical attitude that this show has always been best known for. There's also a fantastic and subtle undercurrent being told with Pops, who struggles about whether he could or even should go along with this plan, being firmly opposed to violence, and searching for a peaceful resolution all the way into the closing minutes of the series. My only gripe with Pops being an ancient chosen one with world-shattering superpowers is that it feels kind of random. Believe it or not. And that's no more evidence by the of the last sentence I just spoke. Yes, we get a tease of Pops' powers on the tail end of Season 7. And yes, Season 8 has heavily been building this information with episodes like The Dream Warrior, Space Escape, and the Ice Tapes. But if you're going to commit to something that bears so much story significance, this just point blank needed to be teased way earlier. Imagine if, instead of at the end of Season 7, we started seeing teases of Pops' powers maybe in Season 2, Season 3, and just kind of sprinkled them out across the series as we went. Imagine if every once in a while we saw Pops question his past to Mr. Maylard, and Mr. Maylard awkwardly shuffling off and kind of dodging the question. This would have made Pops being a chosen one hit so much harder to us as a viewer. And it would have lended to the notion that this was something that's been planned all along, instead of something that these talented writers came up with in the late game. That's not to say any of this is necessarily bad or anything. I still enjoyed the season overall, and I still think everyone who worked on Regular Show is immensely talented. I will still sing the praises of the show all day. I just wish it felt a little more thought out. Before I do arrive at the finale, I want to talk about the final 2 episodes leading up to that, those being Meet the Seer and Cheer Up Pops, both of which are just delightfully meta. The Seer stars, you guessed it, an ancient seer who's been quote-unquote watching them from the beginning, aka the first episode of the series. She throws out a couple of lines that I absolutely love, including saying that she was always more of a CJ fan, thank you, and telling Eileen that she frankly thought she was underused during the run of the show. She lives on planet Nielsen and makes multiple mentions of ratings and viewers, and it's just as well as you can do a fourth wall break while surprisingly having some cryptic undertones to it, telling Pops that sometimes doing something different makes all the difference. But then again, everyone loves reruns. Cheer Up Pops sees Pops being understandably glum prior to the final showdown and has everyone team up to make him a Blu-ray set of all of their memories in case the universe does end up being erased. It's just a really cute episode, I don't know, everybody banding together to make these memories in case this all fails. It's wholesome. I like it. Finally, we arrive at a regular epic final battle. And all issues with Season 8 aside, every single thing that you as a viewer, that me as a viewer, that everyone as a viewer has liked and appreciated about Regular Show is present and accounted for in this finale. The characters are witty and they're true to themselves. The humor is present and every single joke lands. The writing is handled with a quality far beyond what you would ever expect for a situation like this. The action is tense and non-stop and it's choreographed so well. Every single thing here works. Everything. Then we get our final scenes as we start to close out this magnificent series. As everything and everyone around them starts to get erased due to the battle looking like it's going to end in a draw again, we're left with only Pops and Anti-Pops being looked upon by Mordecai and Rigby. As Anti-Pops prepares the death blow, Pops launches himself forward, giving his brother a hug, something alluded to during the episode Kill Him With Kindness earlier this season. Anti-Pops threatens Pops, telling him the minute he lets go, he'll kill him. Pops nods and simply says, "I know, that's why I'm not going to let go." Pops then flies them both towards the sun and commits to killing them both in order to end the cycle of violence and the universe and everything in it being repeatedly reset. I'm sorry. Don't worry, Mordecai and Rigby. I know you're sad, but I promise this is a happy ending. Damn liar. So with that, Pops successfully breaks the cycle, and the dome finally returns to Earth, where it's revealed through a 25 years later montage that everyone gets their happy ending. Rigby and Eileen marry and have children. Mordecai successfully finishes art school and marries a Batgirl named Steph. Muscle Man and Starla have a boatload of kids and continue to live in a trailer in the park. A statue is erected of Pops in honor of his sacrifice, later showing a statue of Mr. Maylard going up right next to it. Benson becomes the new park manager and marries Pam. Fives and Celia have a kid and become popular DJs. And Skips happily continues working at the park, only this time, he's rocking some jorts. Set all of that to David Bowie's Heroes, and you have a masterful and honestly tear-jerking ending that delivers a satisfying payoff on every single thing it promised. Everything. It never feels cheesy or hokey, and as sad as it is, Pops was right. It is a happy ending. My friends, thank you for sitting through all of this with me. That was Regular Show. 8 seasons, 261 episodes, and a movie. I didn't talk about the movie. I liked it, and I enjoyed almost every single minute of it. Quintel and his team are masters of their craft, and everything from the writing to the characters, the creativity displayed here, it just belongs next to the best of the best. Even in the few moments where I was disappointed or annoyed at something, Regular Show has more than earned to do the right, to do whatever it pleases. As any time it pulls a move that would have flatlined a lesser show, it always reaches back to rectify and improve something with a bunch of laughs and a boatload of heart. I have been Fatman, and thank you for sitting through this incredibly long retrospective with me. You know who else makes long videos nobody's gonna watch? My mom!
I don't know, people seem to watch those videos.
Look, Look, I can sit here and tell you how much I enjoyed this show. I could sing its praises all day. I have sat here for probably close to an hour and told you all the things I love about it. But really, there's one man who can sum it all up in just a few simple words. The floor is yours, my friend.
Jolly good show.
Oh, good show.